Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to bring you a Grey Knights focused video. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do. Turn on the bell for notifications to get notified on more content such as this. Necrons, Grey Knights are two of the armies I'm playing primarily, and videos like this one I like to throw out there and create some information and some talk in the community about these different armies, different factions. And after the Arch City GT, which I had a great finish at. And thank you to everyone for all the kind words and congratulations. I had a great time. But enough said with all that. I've had a lot of questions in the comment section about certain things that I did with the army, how I played into certain matchups, why I took certain units. And I've tried to keep up and respond to many different questions in different chains. And over time, it's gotten scattered. So tonight, I just wanted to create a video and talk about what I found with Grey Knights and what worked for me at Arch City, so I can throw this out there in the community and we can talk about this more under this video in the comments section and discuss this and see what changes and what ways we can make to make Grey Knights maybe more of a contender in the meta. Last edition, Harlequins were a very difficult army to play, but one of the strongest for a very, very long time just because of how they could play the missions. And in some ways, I feel like Grey Knights have a similar feel to them, especially with what their special rules are. Granted, how a lot of this stuff works is not traditionally how we would play Grey Knights and is kind of in a different realm of 40K and how it plays, especially with how we're using our resources. At least that's how I've seen it so far with Grey Knights. So first thing I want to do is just address a couple questions about what I noticed for like matchups and stuff like that and scene. Give you guys my thoughts on the direction/weaknesses of it, and tell you some of the changes I'm initially thinking of making and why. And by all means, take my list and give it a try. I mean, I had a lot of fun with it and it worked out well. And it was actually a lot of fun to play, honestly. So, first things first, the list that I brought and some of the units in it. Land Raider. So why I brought the Land Raider. We have to put 50% of our army on the board. If you look in the Leviathan pack, the little Pathlet, which is the standard for the tournaments that I go to, that one, based down to it, you're allowed to put half of your army in reserve. So with that, I have to still put half on the table. At the time when I was first building this thing, Desolation Marines were still prominent. And the concept for this design actually came after playing a game against my good buddy Josh when I played my Catan list. And while I was playing against him, I was just looking at the table going, I want Grey Knights right now. Oh my gosh, this is what I want to play. And the biggest reason is the tactical objectives. So now the Land Raider, why the Land Raider ties into this is I want to put a lot of resources in reserve and utilize those abilities to get things moving, which means that my stuff that's on board is going to be small amounts. And it's very easy for my opponent to over-dedicate into something when there's nothing else they can shoot at. So I need those targets to be durable and hard to kill. So my onboard was my Land Raider, my Terminators with my Grandmaster and the Sigil of Exodus, so that if they got shot at, I could get them out of there. But typically the artillery fire coming into them was easy to get around with the Apothecary. Having the objective control 3 on the Terminators was huge, absolutely huge. With a lot of the single vehicles that I've noticed, like the land speeder that Lane uses, and that stuff is objective control 3. So with one model being objective control 3, it's real easy to get a second model on there that doesn't have to be the Grey Knight Terminator. It could be an Interceptor. It can be a Purifier, something else that's nearby that could easily go and say, okay, here, I'm going to put one guy on this objective. That's 1 point. Now your Terminator comes in and there's your 3. So now you have 4 on objective control value and you take it. So stuff like that I kind of noticed that worked really well. And also at that same time, being able to put a Terminator on 2 objectives. So you immediately are starting off with, okay, I'm putting 3 on these based on the spread of some of the objectives in the game. So I liked, and that's one thing that I really like with the Terminators in the Army. Again, as also being able to be a unit that can be deployed. Now, I do get 2 units that I can put inside of the Land Raider. And the nice thing is it can be any combination based on what my opponent was playing. I could put 2 strike in there. I could put 2 interceptor in there. I can put 1 strike and 1 interceptor. And in my list, I have 2 5-mans of strike and 2 5-men of the interceptors. So that allowed me the variety. Typically, I had the interceptors in reserve. The interceptors being able to shoot and scoot, since it is a different phase. You are only allowed to move once each phase. They can move, they fire and fade. And that is a crucial piece to be able to get behind enemy lines and engage on all fronts. Not to mention the fact that just them on the table alone, having their 12-inch move and an auto 6 on their advance, that's 18 inches from wherever they are that you can put them. And they're infantry, so they're going through walls. And they're smaller, so you can find first terrain that's first 4 line of sight blocking to hide them behind from things like wraith cannons. So, and then last but surely not least of this is the Purifiers. Now, I know I say last, and there is still the Voidsman at Arms and the Calidus Assassin. And, oh, actually, there was some questions about Voidsman at Arms. So, I know some people were like, oh, Voidsman, why the Voidsman? Why Voidsman over the Exactors, which give you a filial pain? The reason was objective control 2. You know, like I'm talking about with the Terminators being objective control 3, and then you have Purifiers and Interceptors at objective control 1, and then the 2 squads of Strike Marines at objective control 2. A lot of this sometimes was being able to dedicate enough individual models to tip the objective over. And then if I can tip the objective over while the strike were there, I can make it sticky and get away from it. So, and that's a lot of where, that's a reason for the Voidsman at Arms, because we're a unit that could just stay in strategic, come on at some point during the game, water over to an objective, and they're objective control 2 for each guy. And they got a rotary cannon. Who can't hate a chain gun? So, but and then the Calidus Assassin is kind of an obvious include. Being able to increase someone's stratagem and command points is just very crucial right now. So now moving over to the Purifiers and Crow. With Grey Knights, we don't have the best anti-tank. We don't have great anti-armor. I mean, I got a Land Raider with 4 las cannons. That's where I was at with it. You know, we don't have a lot of that great anti-armor and anti-high wound stuff to be able to handle things. We still hit kind of mediocrely like a truck in combat. We have ways to boost that, but when you really start dedicating the points into all that, you get one good hit out of it and then the squad gets ripped apart. Even Paladins get ripped apart. But Purifiers. So Purifiers with Crow is, in my opinion, so far what I've seen, one of the best anti-infantry units in the entire game. So that's, for them, I look at it as, okay, I'm going to stack the deck. I have anti-infantry across the board with storm bolters and side cannons. Let's just make sure I'm going to shut infantry down. And with that, that allows us to take advantage of the runes. Because with units like the Purifiers that could then drop within 3 inches, put down 4 heavy flamers, 24 shots of purifying flames, because Crow has 3 plus 1 to 4, and the 6 storm bolters, we can wreck just about anything. And we have a vicious overwatch on top of it with this unit. Once all that infantry is gone from the table, your Wraith Knights, your Fire Prisms, your vehicles like that have to then maneuver around terrain and through stuff. Because, okay, sure, they can kill you from afar, but that's not going to win them the game. That's not going to score them points. And so that's kind of was my theory going into with this list, is if I can take and control that aspect of it, then I can control everything else. Then I can control the points. I control the scoreboard. And that's kind of the goal of the army, is to just control the scoreboard. So, and one of the questions that was asked was Imperial Knights. Like, oh, don't we have a bad game into Imperial Knights? Imperial Knights are AP 1 and 2 on most of their big guns on their Knights. We have cover and armor of contempt and an board-wide 2-up save. we really have a great game into Knights, and we outscore them super easily. Yes, they're objective control 10 on a big Knight. Okay, then let that be and don't hit that till when you go after that objective, make sure you can hit and kill it. The Dread Knight's really hard for them to take down. And the Dread Knight with the hammer, you're tank shocking and basically putting 6 mortal wounds on this thing just to start. So if you can get any damage and take this thing down just a little bit and maybe get it down to like 14 or 15 wounds and then tank shock in on this thing, you're going to hurt it. You're really going to hurt it. And especially that the regular Dread Knight being able to advance and charge on top of having a 2-up, 4-up, on top of multiple wounds, and then having access into true silver armor, that thing is really hard for them to take out unless they get close enough with a thermal cannon. That's the only thing that in fear is the thermal cannon. In my second matchup, there was an Imperial Knight teleporting around the table like we do with a thermal cannon. That was scary. That was scary. I had to get that thing pushed way in the backfield. I was terrified of that thing. Which, honestly, the range is definitely a benefit going into the thermal cannon. But I talked about Eldar quite a bit in here. And sometimes better lucky than good. And my matchup with Eldar was a testament of that. Because looking back at that matchup, had I gone first, I probably would have lost that significantly worse. The Wraith Knight just obliterates things. It's just whatever it looks at, it goes, that's what I'm destroying. So going first would have been really, really tough on me, especially because of how the primaries worked in that mission. A different mission, different time, different story. But I think that because of the way the primaries scored in that mission, I needed to go second to keep up with Eldar because I didn't have anything to really remove the Wraith Knights. Now, I made singular Wraith Knight. I made a couple of attacks at Fire Prisms, failed some 9-inch charges. Hitting those 9-inch charges maybe would have helped out, and I could have taken out a Fire Prism. But especially because I had the Terminators on the charge and probably would have popped Devastating Wounds and had the lethal and just gone, anything that I roll a 6 on, something is happening here. But, that wasn't in the cards. However, going second was. And with the mission, you could only score 10 each turn on primary, and then you scored points at the end of the game for each primary you held. Because I went second, I was able to go out on the 2 objectives prior, and then I scored the objectives, and then I was able to score at the end of the game for holding 2 objectives completely unsafe. I literally had Castellan Crow and 2 single strike Marines left at the end of this game. It was duck and hide left and right. Every attack I made just didn't do anything. But the one thing that did work, I removed all the Warp Spiders by turn 2, and I removed the Eldar Guardians on turn 3. All the infantry that he did have to move through the buildings and get towards me was off the table. So now he really had to work to get those guys out of those buildings. So that gave me a lot of opportunity to score points. Cards were decent. I don't really think there was anything too much that I couldn't score. And with this army, that's one of the big factors. So this army, I built it also to be able to do tactical. Because any of the tactical cards that are difficult are the ones that I'm able to do with this army, such as engage on all fronts. Engage on all fronts, you're picking guys up off the table. You have 3 squads in your pocket. You draw engage. Before you put it down, you go, okay, unit here. I score engage on all fronts. And I'm never afraid to pick up a single model. Single model units are absolute gold. A single strike Marines left alive, you go over and you can find that perfect spot to put that guy and go, okay, well, he's dead, but he just got me 4 points for engage on all fronts. I'll take it. Love that guy. Love those models. Those models are great pickups. And heck, it even lets you run a gambit. I didn't have such a great matchup against World Eaters this last time I played. I was trying something new, and I pulled the Purifiers out because, again, I played against 2 games into Imperial Knights. So I was starting to look at the value behind my theory with the Purifiers. Like, oh, maybe this isn't going to work. So I pulled the Purifiers out, and when I played the World Eaters, I looked at the Berserkers, and granted, I had some horrible luck. Horrible, horrible luck. Like, I used up all my luck earlier on in the week, apparently, because I seriously could not kill an 8-bound with 1 wound left on it, with a Dread Knight, with a sledgehammer. And okay, sure, you win. Gotcha. But on the other side of the coin, as I'm looking across the table, I'm looking at Khorne Berserkers and going, how do I handle you? I shoot at you, you move. I can't shoot at you with 1 unit and pick up a good enough amount. I need my Purifiers. So the Purifiers went back in. And so I think I covered basically all the units for it. You know, strike giving sticky objectives is huge. I love that. And that's actually some of the things I want to emphasize and pick up and moving on. Oh, Calidus Assassin. So Calidus Assassin, something I started to do beforehand, and I don't know how many people have actually thought about this, so I'm going to bring it out to there. When I deployed the Calidus Assassin outside of my zone, she's going towards an objective marker. I deploy her exactly enough to make her normal move or advance 1 inch and be within range of the objective marker. And that way, really playing off that lone operative factor. Because to get to her, you got to get close. And usually on turn 1, that's not going to happen if you go second. Most of the time. Most of the time. There are some World Eater advance and charges that may make that work out a little bit different. But she then, like the rest of your army, you can pick her up. And now that's a 4th unit you have in your hand to go, okay, where do I want to be this next turn? Where do I want to do stuff? Where am I putting guys? And in that matchup, I can put more on the board to be able to do that immediately. Whether I'm deep striking or not, I'm able to pick those units up and then protect my backfield from an alpha strike, which I probably should have done in the World Eaters matchup in hindsight. So when I shifted over and took the Purifiers out, I brought them back in. And now the list is gone kind of back to what I took before. And I'm feeling a little bit better about it. I'm looking forward to trying one new thing that I'm working on. So I still have the Land Raider. I still have the Dread Knight. Purifiers and Crow are back in. 5 Terminators in the army, still with the objective control 3. 2 5-man strike. 2 5-man interceptor. And a Tech Marine with 4 servitors. So I dropped the Grand Master for a Tech Marine with the Sigil of Exigence, and I dropped the Voidsman at Arms for servitors. So now I have a unit that one of my 5-man strike with sticky objectives now has, when it gets shot at for the first time, can pick up and move somewhere else. That's in my thought is that is really going to help me with them being sticky objective and a 2-up save. And now it's a 10-man squad. Yes, it's more susceptible to blast weapons, but the first 4 hits can pick off servitors. And I got a 6-up invuln floating for 4 hits in the squad. I'll take it. And then they can land and sticky an objective and take that objective and keep it in my control and then pick up and go somewhere else with them. And that's kind of what I want to mess around with and see a little bit. I'm on the fence with the servitors and thinking about bringing the Voidsman back in and not doing the servitors just because of blast weapons. And the squad, I mean, a 6-man is not difficult to hide. And it's just a unit that it has one job. It has one job. The reason I like the servitors is, again, extra bodies to take wounds, 6-up invuln, and hey, you get 2 multi-meltas with them, so that ain't bad. So I'm still on the fence with them. But ultimately, that's kind of my theory and my thought behind the army. Land Raider, Terminators on board, 2 squads in the Land Raider, Dread Knight on the board, and then Interceptor, Strike. Interceptor, Purifier in Deep Strike. Calidus is on the board too. And then from that point, that's where I have the tools to be able to play from as well as with this. So yeah, I hope that covered a lot of what I was thinking about with this army, my thought process going into it. I hope it wasn't too long-winded. Let me know in the comments section. I wouldn't mind doing more videos like this if there's an interest for it. I don't want to this is more of an opinion cast of mine that just is throwing my opinion out there. And if you guys want, I can do more of these, but you know what? Hey, just let me know in the comments section what you guys thought. And thanks for listening. Hopefully you made it all the way to the end of this. I do apologize for it being a little long. I love me some 40K and I can talk about this for hours. So guys, thanks for listening. Again, thank you for all the kind words, and we'll talk to you again soon.